Hello everyone! Today we're going to complete a full TOEFL listening section together to check how prepared you are for this part of the exam. Keep track of how many questions you answer correctly. And don't forget to share your results in the comments. We'll go through 3 lectures and 2 conversations. After each question, I'll pause the video to give you some time to answer, and then I'll reveal the correct response. This won't happen on test day, but it's a great way to practice and review any mistakes right away. We'll also cover some key vocabulary from the lectures and conversations, so grab a pen or a pencil and let's dive in.
Listen to a conversation between a student and a financial aid advisor at a university.
Hi, Ms. Ramirez. Thanks for seeing me. I'm having a bit of trouble managing my finances.
Of course, Liam. That's what I'm here for. What seems to be the biggest challenge?
Well, it's everything, really. Tuition, books, living expenses. It's all adding up faster than I expected. I feel like I'm constantly running out of money.
I understand. It's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it, right? Let's see if we can patch that hole. First, have you created a budget?
A budget? Not really. I kind of just, spend what I need and hope there's enough left over.
Okay, that's a common starting point, but it's not very sustainable. A budget is like a roadmap for your money. It helps you see where it's going and make sure you're prioritizing the important things.
So, how do I even start?
The first step is to track your expenses. For 1 month, write down everything you spend money on, even that small coffee or snack. Every penny counts.
Everything? That sounds tedious.
It might seem that way at first, but it's incredibly eye-opening. You'll be surprised where your money actually goes. There are also apps that can help you with this, like Mint or YNAB.
Apps, huh? Okay, I can do that. What's next?
Once you know where your money is going, you can categorize your expenses. Separate them into needs, like tuition, rent, and groceries, and wants, like eating out, entertainment, and new clothes.
Needs and wants? I guess that makes sense.
Exactly. Then you can start making choices. Can you reduce any of your wants? Maybe eat out less often or find cheaper entertainment options. Small changes can make a big difference.
I could probably cut back on eating out and maybe look for used textbooks instead of buying new ones.
Excellent. Those are great ideas. Used textbooks can save you a significant amount of money. Also, check out the university's resources. We have a food pantry for students, and there are often free events on campus.
A food pantry? I didn't know that.
Yes, it's available to all students. And we also offer workshops on financial literacy topics like budgeting, saving, and managing student loans.
Wow, that sounds really helpful. When are those workshops?
They're usually held once a month. I can give you a schedule, or you can find it on the financial aid website.
I'll definitely check that out. This is already making me feel a little less stressed.
Good. Remember, it's a process. It takes time to develop good financial habits. Don't get discouraged if you slip up occasionally. Just keep learning and adjusting.
Thanks, Ms. Ramirez. I really appreciate your help. I feel like I have a much better plan now.
You're very welcome, Liam. And don't hesitate to come back if you have more questions. My door is always open.
Question 1. What are the speakers mainly discussing? The correct answer is B. Strategies for managing personal finances and creating a budget. Liam is having trouble managing his finances, and the financial aid advisor gives him tips on how to handle that. She tells him he needs to create a budget and explains how to do it. Question 2. Which budgeting apps does Ms. Ramirez mention as helpful tools for tracking expenses? The correct answer is A. Mint and YNAB. Ms. Ramirez suggests that Liam write down all of his expenses for a month. When he complains about how hard or tedious, meaning boring, it sounds, she says there are 2 apps that can help him track his expenses. Question 3. According to Ms. Ramirez, what is the first step in creating a budget? The first step in creating a budget is tracking every expense for 1 month. So answer B is the correct one. Question 4. What does Ms. Ramirez mean when she says, it's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it? The correct answer is B, the constant outflow of money despite saving efforts. When Liam complains that tuition, books, living expenses, and other costs are all adding up too fast, and that it makes him feel like he's constantly running out of money, Ms. Ramirez says that she understands and replies, it's like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in it. She means that Liam's money is disappearing just like water leaking from a bucket with a hole. There is a constant outflow of money. Outflow usually refers to a large amount of money spent by a company. But in this case, it describes how money is leaving Liam despite his efforts to save. Question 5. According to the conversation, what are 2 resources the university offers to help students with their finances? Just 2 answers. Well, students can use a food pantry, answer A, and financial literacy workshops, answer B. Ms. Ramirez mentioned both of these resources. In case you're wondering, a food pantry looks like this. It's a place where students can get food for free. And workshops might look like this. Workshops are short interactive lessons or training sessions often held in small groups. Financial literacy is the ability to understand and use financial skills, such as budgeting or saving, which is exactly what Liam needs. One of the most important things to remember about the TOEFL, it's not just about your English proficiency. If you want to get to your target score fast and from the first attempt, you need to understand the rules, patterns, and hidden traps of the TOEFL. For example, did you know that answer choices with absolute words, such as only or completely, are often incorrect in the reading section? Do you know the strategy that will help you solve insert text questions in just a few minutes? Have you learned the speaking and writing templates that allow you to answer quickly and score high? I've seen students with excellent English skills receive average scores, and others score high even though their English wasn't perfect. That's why we created our TOEFL course, to provide you with all the tips, tricks, and strategies you need to master the test and reach your target score in the shortest time possible. You'll get access to 32 recorded practice sessions that cover each part of the test, a group Telegram chat where you can ask me questions about the course material and interact with your TOEFL classmates, high-scoring speaking and writing templates, and a consultation with me where I will evaluate your essays and speaking skills. You'll also receive access to the LinguaTOEFL platform where you can apply all the skills you've learned in the course by practicing all 4 sections. Drill reading question types until you master each one. Record your speaking responses and get them scored right on the platform. Get your essays evaluated by AI. I'm leaving the link in the description below. Click on it and start working toward your dream score now. Let's move on to the next part where you listen to a lecture.
Listen to part of a lecture in a modern history class examining the Cold War. The professor has been discussing the concept of proxy wars.
All right, so we've been talking about proxy wars and how they were a defining feature of the Cold War. Essentially, you have these 2 superpowers, the US and the Soviet Union, who are ideologically opposed capitalism versus communism, but they're avoiding direct, large-scale military conflict. Why? Because of the threat of nuclear war, mutually assured destruction, or MAD, as it was, somewhat darkly, nicknamed. So instead of fighting each other directly, they supported opposing sides in smaller conflicts around the globe. Think of it like 2 chess players who, instead of moving their own pieces, are controlling other, smaller chess sets on different boards. Now, a key concept that often gets overlooked when we discuss these proxy wars is the idea of plausible deniability. This was crucial for both the US and the USSR. Plausible deniability means that a government can credibly deny any involvement in a particular action, even if they were secretly behind it. It's about creating a level of separation, a buffer, so they can avoid direct blame and the potential for escalation. It's a way of saying, we didn't do it, even if everyone kind of suspects you did. Let's look at a couple of examples. Take the Korean War. The U.S. supported South Korea, providing troops, supplies, and air support. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, supported North Korea. They provided weapons, advisors, and crucially, pilots for the North Korean Air Force. But the Soviet pilots flew planes with North Korean markings, and they were officially volunteers. This allowed the Soviets to claim they weren't directly involved in the fighting, even though they were playing a pivotal role. It kept the conflict limited, at least in theory. Another example, and a somewhat more complex one, is the Soviet-Afghan War. The Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in 1979 to support the communist government there. The U.S. in turn saw this as a Soviet expansionist move and a threat to their interests in the region. So what did the U.S. do? They provided covert support to the Mujahideen, the Afghan resistance fighters. This support included weapons, training, and funding, often channeled through third-party countries like Pakistan. Again, plausible deniability was key. The U.S. could argue they were simply supporting a legitimate resistance movement against a foreign invader, even though their real goal was to bog down the Soviets in a costly and unwinnable war. A student once asked, did it really work? Well, it did, to an extent, help. The goal, remember, wasn't to hide their involvement completely. That was often impossible. But to maintain a level of ambiguity that would prevent a direct confrontation with the other superpower. It was a dangerous game, a high-stakes balancing act, and it's something we see echoed to varying degrees in international relations even today. Plausible deniability. It's a way of operating in the shadows, of influencing events without taking full responsibility. It's a concept worth understanding, not just in the context of the Cold War, but in understanding how power operates on the global stage.
Question 1. What is the main topic of the lecture? It's the role of plausible deniability in Cold War proxy conflicts. Answer B. Plausible deniability is when someone pretends they don't know about something, so later they can say they weren't involved. By the way, proxy wars are conflicts where two powerful countries or groups don't fight each other directly. Instead, they support other countries or groups who do the fighting for them. Question 2. According to the professor, why did the superpowers engage in proxy wars instead of direct conflict? Well, the correct answer is B. They feared the devastating consequences of a nuclear exchange. In the lecture, the professor explained that both the US and the USSR engaged in proxy wars because of the threat of nuclear war and the idea of mutually assured destruction. Mutually means in a way that involves both sides. For example, if an agreement is mutually beneficial, it means that it benefits both parties. Question 3. In the context of the Korean War, what example of plausible deniability does the professor provide? Answer B is correct. The Soviet Union using volunteer pilots in North Korean aircraft. The Soviet Union supported North Korea by providing weapons, advisors, and pilots. However, the Soviet pilots flew planes marked as North Korean, making it harder to accuse the Soviet Union of direct involvement. They were also officially labeled as volunteers, so if anyone questioned their presence, the Soviet Union could claim they were acting on their own. Question 4. What was the primary US objective in providing support to the Mujahideen in Afghanistan, according to the professor? Their primary objective was to create a situation where the Soviet Union became trapped in a draining conflict. The professor explained that the US provided resistance fighters with weapons, training, and funding, often through third-party countries like Pakistan. Plausible deniability was key again. The US could always argue that it was simply supporting a legitimate resistance movement against a foreign invader, even though the real goal was to bog down the Soviets in a costly and unwinnable war. To bog someone down means to make them stuck, usually in a difficult or time-consuming situation. Question 5. What does the professor suggest about the effectiveness of plausible deniability? She suggests that it created a degree of uncertainty that helped avoid direct superpower conflict. Answer C. In the lecture, the professor said that plausible deniability did help, to some extent. The goal wasn't to completely hide a country's involvement, that was often impossible, but rather to maintain a level of ambiguity that would prevent direct confrontation with the other superpower. So yes, it did help avoid direct conflict between them. Let's move on to the final question. Question 6.
Now listen again to part of the lecture.
It's about creating a level of separation, a buffer, so they can avoid direct blame and the potential for escalation. It's a way of saying, we didn't do it, even if everyone kind of suspects you did.
Why does the professor say this? It's a way of saying we didn't do it, even if everyone kind of suspects you did. The correct answer is B. To give a simplistic, relatable definition of a complex political concept. The professor is explaining the term plausible deniability. Since it's a complex idea, she tries to make it easier to understand by putting it in simpler terms. Let's move on to the next section.
Listen to a conversation between a student and the chair of the history department at a university.
Good morning, Dr. Evans. Thanks for seeing me.
Of course, Liam. Please have a seat. What's on your mind?
Well, it's about Professor Miller's History 101 class. I'm, a little concerned about his teaching style.
I see. Can you be more specific? What aspects are causing you concern?
It's mainly the lectures. He tends to go off on tangents, and it's hard to follow the main points. We spend a lot of time on, really obscure details, and I'm worried it's affecting my understanding of the core material.
I understand. So the lectures feel disorganized and lack focus on the essential concepts?
Exactly. And it's not just me. I've talked to other students, and a few of them feel the same way. We're all a bit lost.
I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, Liam. It takes courage to voice these concerns. Have you tried speaking with Professor Miller directly?
I haven't. I was a bit nervous about it, to be honest. He's a very respected scholar, and I didn't want to offend him.
That's understandable. Sometimes those conversations can be difficult. Perhaps I could offer some suggestions. You could frame it as seeking clarification, rather than criticism. For example, you could ask him during office hours to summarize the key takeaways from a particular lecture.
That's a good idea. I could also ask for, a list of the main topics we should be focusing on for the exams.
Precisely. That shows you're engaged and proactive, not just complaining. It also gives him valuable feedback in a non-threatening way.
That makes sense. I'm just worried that, if I don't grasp the fundamentals now, it'll be harder to succeed in upper-level history courses.
That's a valid concern. A strong foundation is crucial. Now, if speaking with him directly doesn't improve things, there are other avenues. The university has a student feedback system, and we take those evaluations very seriously.
Okay, good to know. Is that anonymous?
Yes, completely. And the feedback is only reviewed after grades are submitted, so there's no risk of any, shall we say, unintended consequences.
Right, that's reassuring.
We also have peer tutoring available through the history department. Perhaps working with a senior student could help you solidify your understanding of the material.
That's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that.
And of course, my door is always open. If you continue to have concerns, please don't hesitate to come back and see me.
Thank you, Dr. Evans. I really appreciate your advice and support. I feel much better about how to approach this now.
You're very welcome, Liam. I'm confident we can find a solution that works for everyone. Remember, effective communication is key, both in history and in life.
Question 1. What are the speakers mainly discussing? Liam's concerns about Professor Miller's teaching style and potential solutions. Answer B. This conversation was relatively easy, so I'll just give you the correct answers here. If you need an explanation, don't worry. You'll see it on the screen right after the correct answer. Question 2. According to the transcript, why is Liam hesitant to approach Professor Miller directly about his teaching style? The correct answer is B. He fears a confrontation with a professor known for his stellar reputation. Question 3. According to Dr. Evans, when is the student feedback reviewed? The student feedback is reviewed once all final grades are finalized. Answer C. Question 4. What does Dr. Evans mean when she says, "There's no risk of any, shall we say, unintended consequences"? The correct answer is D. That providing feedback will have no negative impact on his grade. Question 5. What are 2 resources or strategies Dr. Evans suggests to Liam? Choose 2 answers. B. Utilizing the university's anonymous student feedback system. And C. Accessing the history department's peer tutoring program. Well done! Now here is some essential vocabulary from this conversation that you may encounter across all TOEFL sections. Stellar. Stellar means excellent or outstanding, like stars in the sky. So a stellar reputation means that someone is very respected, trusted, and known for being very good at what they do. This word can also appear in texts or lectures on astronomy. If you struggle with that topic, check out my vocabulary video where I explain difficult astronomy terms and processes using simple language, bright pictures, and colorful clips. Unintended consequences. These are results you didn't plan or expect, usually negative or surprising. It's when you do something, but then something else happens that you didn't mean to happen. For example, the government bans plastic bags, but this leads to more paper waste. That's an unintended consequence. To utilize means to use, often in an effective or practical way. Now, in this part, we also came across 2 terms that are important when studying in the US: the university's anonymous student feedback system and the peer tutoring program. You might encounter these terms in the future, so it's a good idea to know what they mean. In many American universities, students are encouraged to take an active role in improving their education. For example, most schools have an anonymous student feedback system where you can share your honest thoughts about professors and courses without giving your name. These comments are taken seriously and are often used to make changes or improve teaching quality. The peer tutoring program is another common feature. This means that students who are strong in a certain subject volunteer or get hired to help others who need extra support. It's a great way to get help from someone who understands what you're going through, and it's usually free. Time for the next lecture.
Listen to part of a lecture in a hydrology class. The professor has been discussing different sources of fresh water.
Okay, so last time we talked about surface water, rivers, lakes, that sort of thing. Today, I want to move on to groundwater, which, is a crucial part of the water cycle and a really important resource for us. Now think about it, where does rain go after it falls on the ground? Some of it runs off into those rivers and lakes we discussed, sure. Some of it is taken up by plants, and some evaporates back into the atmosphere. But a good portion of it infiltrates, that's the key word here, infiltrates down into the ground. This water, this groundwater, fills up the spaces, the pores and cracks in soil and rock. Imagine a sponge, right? You pour water on it, and it soaks it up. The ground is like a giant natural sponge. We call these underground layers of water-bearing rock or sediment aquifers. Aquifers are essentially underground reservoirs, and these aquifers can be huge. They can stretch for miles and miles, holding vast quantities of fresh water. Now, the top of this saturated zone, the zone where all the spaces are filled with water, is called the water table. The water table isn't a flat, static thing. It rises and falls depending on a few factors. For instance, during a prolonged drought, the water table will drop because there's less infiltration from rainfall. Conversely, after heavy rains, the water table will rise. The depth of the water table can vary dramatically too. In some places, it might be just a few feet below the surface. In others, it could be hundreds of feet down. So how do we use groundwater? Well, primarily through wells. We drill wells down into these aquifers and pump the water out. This water is used for all sorts of things: drinking water, irrigation for agriculture, industrial processes, you name it. In many parts of the world, groundwater is the main source of fresh water, particularly in arid and semi-arid regions where surface water is scarce. Does anyone know of a major heavily used aquifer in the United States? Yes, Sarah?
I think the Ogallala Aquifer. It's under the Great Plains, right?
Exactly. The Ogallala Aquifer is a classic example. It underlies parts of 8 states, from South Dakota down to Texas, and it's a huge source of water for agriculture in that region. Unfortunately, it's also a prime example of a problem we face with groundwater: over-extraction. We're pumping water out of the Ogallala and many other aquifers around the world much faster than it's being replenished naturally through infiltration. Think of it like constantly withdrawing money from your bank account without making any deposits. Eventually, you're going to run out. This over-extraction has some serious consequences. First, it can lead to land subsidence. That's when the ground actually sinks because the water that was supporting the soil and rock layers is gone. We see this in places like California's Central Valley, another major agricultural area heavily reliant on groundwater. Second, in coastal areas, overpumping can cause saltwater intrusion. Basically, the fresh water in the aquifer acts as a barrier, keeping the salt water from the ocean from moving inland. But when you remove too much fresh water, that barrier weakens, and salt water can seep into the aquifer, contaminating the freshwater supply. This is a big problem in many coastal communities. Well, are there any questions?
Question 1. What is the primary topic of the lecture? The correct answer is C. Underground water sources and their importance. At the beginning of the lecture, the professor says that today she wants to move on to groundwater, which is a crucial part of the water cycle and a really important resource for people. Then, she explains what groundwater is and discusses aquifers, excessive groundwater extraction and its consequences. Question 2. According to the professor, what is an aquifer? An underground layer of rock or sediment that holds water. Answer C. The professor says that groundwater infiltrates into the ground and fills the spaces and cracks in soil and rock. This is similar to how a sponge soaks up water. These underground layers of water-bearing rock or sediment are called aquifers. That's why C is the correct answer. Question 3. What determines the level of the water table? C. The amount of rainfall and rate of infiltration. To answer this question, you need to understand what a water table is. It's the top of the saturated zone, the zone where all the spaces are filled with water. It's not flat or static. It rises and falls depending on a few factors. During a prolonged drought, the water table drops because there is less infiltration from rainfall. Conversely, after heavy rains, the water table rises. That's why rainfall and the rate of infiltration determine the level of the water table. Question 4. What example of an aquifer does the professor mention, and what issue is associated with it? The correct answer is C. The Ogallala Aquifer, over-extraction. The professor explains that we access groundwater through wells, which are drilled into aquifers to pump water out. In many parts of the world, groundwater is the main source of fresh water, especially in arid or semi-arid regions where surface water is scarce. She then asks students if they know a major heavily used aquifer in the US, and one of them names the Ogallala Aquifer. The professor confirms that it's a classic example of an aquifer and a major source of water for agriculture in its region. Unfortunately, it's also a prime example of over-extraction. Question 5. What are two consequences of excessive groundwater extraction? The professor explains. Choose two answers. The consequences are B. The sinking of the ground surface, and C. Contamination of fresh water with seawater. According to the professor, excessive extraction means we're pumping water out of aquifers much faster than it's being naturally replenished through infiltration. This leads to land subsidence. She explains land subsidence as when the ground sinks, because the water that was supporting the soil and rock layers is gone. Then she mentions a second consequence. In coastal areas, overpumping can cause saltwater intrusion. Normally, the fresh water in the aquifer acts as a barrier that keeps ocean saltwater from moving inland. But when too much fresh water is removed, that barrier weakens and saltwater can seep into the aquifer, contaminating the freshwater supply. Question 6.
Now listen again to part of the lecture.
Basically, the fresh water in the aquifer acts as a barrier, keeping the salt water from the ocean from moving inland. But when you remove too much fresh water, that barrier weakens, and salt water can seep into the aquifer, contaminating the freshwater supply. This is a big problem in many coastal communities. Well, are there any questions?
Why does the professor say this? Well, are there any questions? D. To check for understanding and invite inquiries. This one is easy. The professor is simply trying to see if the students understand what she said and is encouraging them to ask questions if they have any. Now, let's go over some of the words from the lecture that I often see in the listening section and other parts of the TOEFL. Sediment. These are small pieces of rock or sand that settle at the bottom of water. Soil. Soil is the top layer of earth where plants grow. Well. A well is a deep hole dug to reach water underground. Arid. This means very dry. Arid regions are areas with little or no rainfall, so they're extremely dry. Semi-arid. This means somewhat dry. These areas get more rain than arid regions, but still not very much. Scarce. Scarce means not enough or hard to find. When food is scarce, it means it's difficult to find. In arid regions, water is scarce, meaning there isn't enough of it. Prime is easy. It means main or most important. A prime example means the most important or typical example. Extraction. Extraction is the act of taking something out, such as water, oil, or minerals. To replenish, it means to fill up again or to replace what was lost. To sink. To sink is to go down or drop lower, usually into water or the ground. When land sinks, it means the ground level goes down. Intrusion. Intrusion is unwanted entry into a place. Saltwater intrusion is when saltwater moves into freshwater areas, like aquifers. To seep. To seep is to leak slowly or flow through something gradually, like water through soil. Finally, to contaminate means to make something dirty or unsafe, usually by adding harmful substances. It's similar in meaning to pollute. These words are really common in reading passages and lectures, so make sure to write them down. If you want to study English in Dubai, English Path is the perfect choice. It's the only school in the UAE accredited by the British Council and is located right in the heart of Knowledge Park, the city's student hub. You'll enjoy spacious classrooms, a library, a lounge area, and a diverse community of students from 50 different countries. All teachers are native speakers from the UK and the US. The intensive course offers 20+ lessons per week, along with electives in business, finance, conversational English, and more, suitable for all levels. English Path in Dubai is your ticket to a confident future in English. Sign up for a free consultation via the link in the description to learn more. Now let's listen to the next lecture.
Listen to part of a lecture in a primatology class. The professor has been discussing primate communication.
All right, class, so we have been talking about primate communication and how it is not just about vocalizations, right? We have looked at gestures, facial expressions. Today, I want to focus on a fascinating aspect of primate social organization, grooming. Now, you might be thinking grooming like picking bugs off each other? Well, yes, partly, but it is so much more than that. In the primate world, grooming is a fundamental social activity. It is a way of building and maintaining relationships. Think of it like humans having coffee with a friend or giving someone a pat on the back. Grooming involves one primate carefully picking through the fur of another, removing dirt, parasites, dead skin, things like that. It is obviously beneficial for hygiene, keeping the animals healthy. But the social function is, in many ways, even more important. The act of grooming strengthens social bonds. It reduces tension and aggression within the group. It is a way of saying, I trust you, I care about you. And it is often reciprocal, you groom me, and I will groom you later. This reciprocity is key to understanding its social role. Let us look at some examples. Chimpanzees, for instance, spend a significant amount of time grooming each other. High-ranking chimps often receive more grooming than they give. This reinforces their status within the group. It is like a subordinate showing deference to a dominant individual. And interestingly, grooming can even be used as a kind of currency. A chimp might groom another in exchange for, say, support in a future conflict or access to food. It is a complex social exchange. Another great example is found in macaque monkeys. Studies have shown that female macaques form strong grooming networks. These networks are not random. They tend to groom relatives more often than non-relatives, and they groom individuals of similar rank more often than those of very different ranks. This creates, well, a kind of social stability. It helps maintain the social hierarchy and reinforces kinship ties. These grooming networks can be quite intricate, and they can influence everything from access to resources to protection from predators. So what are the implications of all this? Well, understanding grooming behavior gives us insights into the complexities of primate social life. It shows us that these animals are not just, randomly interacting. They have structured relationships, and grooming is a crucial tool for navigating those relationships. It is a window into their social intelligence. It helps us understand how they cooperate, how they compete, and how they maintain social cohesion. And frankly, it is a reminder that social bonding is a fundamental need, not just for humans, but for many other primates as well. Any questions? Okay, let us move on to discussing.
Question 1. What is the primary focus of the lecture? The role of grooming in primate social structures. The correct answer is B. At the beginning of the lecture, the professor says, "Today I want to focus on a fascinating aspect of primate social organization, grooming." By the way, if you didn't know, in animals, especially in primates, grooming often means picking dirt or insects off each other's fur. Question 2. Besides hygiene, what other significant benefit does grooming provide for primates, according to the professor? The correct answer is C. It serves to reinforce social connections and ease group conflict. In the lecture, the professor says that grooming is so much more than picking bugs off each other. It's a fundamental social activity. It's a way of building and maintaining relationships. She explains that grooming strengthens social bonds and reduces tension and aggression within the group. That's why answer C is correct. To reinforce means to make something stronger. To reinforce social connections means to strengthen relationships between people. Question 3. In chimpanzees' communities, what does the professor suggest is indicated when a high-ranking individual receives more grooming? B. An affirmation of their dominant position in the group. The professor says that high-ranking chimps tend to receive more grooming than they give. This reinforces their status within the group. It's like a subordinate showing deference to a dominant individual. Deference means showing respect to someone, especially because they're older or more important. Question 4. According to the professor, what pattern is commonly observed in the grooming networks of female macaque monkeys? They favor grooming family members and those of comparable social standing. Answer C. Studies have shown that female macaques form strong grooming networks, and these networks are not random. They tend to groom relatives more often than non-relatives, and they groom individuals of similar rank more often than those of very different ranks. This helps create a sense of social stability. Question 5. What overall insight does the professor say the study of primate grooming provides? The correct answer is B. It reveals the intricate nature of relationships and social dynamics within primate groups. In the lecture, the professor says that understanding grooming behavior gives us insights into the complexities of primate social life. She adds that it shows these animals are not just randomly interacting. They have structured relationships, and grooming is a crucial tool for navigating those relationships. That's why answer B is correct. Intricate means very detailed and complicated. An intricate design has many small parts or patterns. Primate social life is intricate because it involves many complex relationships. Question 6.
Now listen again to part of the lecture.
And frankly, it is a reminder that social bonding is a fundamental need, not just for humans, but for many other primates as well.
Why does the professor say this? And frankly, it's a reminder that social bonding is a fundamental need. Answer B is correct. To emphasize the broad significance of social connections across species. The professor says that social bonding is a fundamental skill not just for humans, but also for other primates, which means this skill is important across different species. By the way, social bonding is a common term. It means forming close relationships with others through trust, care, and shared experiences. For example, grooming helps monkeys with social bonding. It brings them closer together. As for people, they build social bonds by talking, helping each other, and spending time together. This is the end of the listening section. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to let me know in the comments below how many correct answers you have and which of the new words we discussed after each part were new to you. Also, if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon to be notified when the next video comes out. And remember, scoring 100+ on the TOEFL isn't rocket science. It's the little things you do that make all the difference. As always, I wish you all a stellar TOEFL score. Until next time, bye-bye.